Well, you look fabulous, my sister, and
Thank you.
welcome to 30,
Likewise.
30, 30. Oh, so good to see you.
Me
So good to see you.
too.
All right. So let's get started, Crib community, shall we? Yes, yes, and yes. All right. For those of you, welcome, Crib community. Welcome back. It's 3830 season 5, y'all. Season 5. Can you believe that? Season 5. 5 seasons, and we still here. We still here running strong, and it's because of you. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are new to the Crib community, 3830 is an Instagram live show where every Wednesday night, for just 30 minutes, we hold the space to have candid conversations about the impact of structural violence on some of our most vulnerable communities. We have these candid conversations from both our head and our heart space. As I told Dr. Sibblis, we are just having coffee and spilling the tea about the things that we do on a regular basis. So tonight, yet again, starting off episode 1, you are in for a treat. This year, this season, our season is entitled Strange Fruit, addressing the violent erasure of Black bodies. Now, for those of you who may recall Billie Holiday sang a famous song entitled Strange Fruit. And that song really comes from a context of her, and a conversation or the experience of witnessing the hanging of Black people, Black bodies. And the title really came to me with the thought process to really have candid conversations, as we do here at the Crib community, about the subtle and not so subtle ways Black bodies are erased. Tonight, with Dr. Camisha Sibblis, our episode is entitled Policing Black Bodies. So we're going to set it off talking about the many ways in which Black bodies are policed. So without further ado, I'm going to read your bio, sis. Dr. Camisha Sibblis, Professor Camisha Sibblis, is an assistant professor of criminology, law, and society with a focus on Black Canadian studies and sociology at the University of Toronto. Woo-hoo! She is the associate director of the InLight program. The InLight program is a new initiative at U of T designed to enhance student mental health and wellness through an innovative research and applications in collaboration with post-secondary students, institutions, and community partners. She is also an adjunct professor at School of Social Work at the University of Windsor and faculty affiliate of the Crib. Come on, y'all, give her some love. Give her some love, Crib community, give her some love. All right, her research uses spatial and critical race theories to focus on anti-Black racism and the construction of identity. Specifically, her work traces the manner in which different spaces throughout history have constructed the Black body as abject and have functioned as regulating sites of violence. Camisha has extensive experience working with marginalized communities as a school social worker, shout out for social work, a child welfare worker, and clinician assessing the effects of anti-Black racism on the lives of the defenders for sentencing hearings. She is an experienced mental health practitioner, EDI consultant, and a court-designated expert on systemic racism. Among her vast community work, she sat on the board of the Black Community Action Network and is a long-standing member of the Council for Adolescent Suicide Prevention. Crib community, give Dr. Sibblis a warm welcome like only the Crib community can. Hello, holla, holla, holla. You see love in the chat. Everybody's shouting out MSW. I mean, you are welcome. I just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. You're like, yeah, let's do this. I see.
Yeah.
Y'all, it's coming. I'm just sit and get ready. We've had conversations off the live, so you're not ready. You're not ready. You're not ready. So just real, I like to start low and slow.
Okay.
What drew you to this work? What drew you to this work?
Ooh. Okay, so
All
that's a
right.
complex,
You're
it's
like
a
that
really
part.
complex situation. Yeah, that part, because I feel like social workers, specifically Black social workers, Black women, we hustlers. Um, and I'm a social worker by trade, and so I've done so much. But I think what got me into social work, I'll start with that, is a deep desire to liberate my people.
Mm,
Um, I was
mm,
raised by very, very race conscious Jamaican parents, and
I love it.
and yeah, they did not pull punches and they weren't about the niceties. They gave me the real deal when it came to
Mm,
my social realities and what barriers I faced. They were the type of parents that would fight alongside me if I had issues at school.
mm,
The school authorities were actually afraid of my parents, and that's a whole other story. But they were, outspoken Black people, and we can get into the danger that the Black body represents. But I
mm,
grew up seeing that, and they were all about the fight,
mm,
um, and they were really rebellious. And so, in terms of deliberation through, I initially wanted to do that through law, and I did my LSAT, and was going to go to law school, and one of the professors took me aside and said, "Have you ever thought about social work? Have you ever thought about the lawyers that you had encountered and whether or not
mm,
that that really jived with who you were?" And I took a step back and did think about it, and I realized that I wasn't willing to do some of the things
ooh,
that some of the lawyers had to do.
mm,
I really wanted to only fight for what I believed in, um, and not necessarily become indoctrinated in the legal
mm,
system. So I decided to look at social work. So I began in child welfare, having had very personal encounters with the system. I was a teenage mom, and I, firsthand firsthand experienced how it oppressed um, Black mothers and how the policies
mhm,
oppressed mothers. And this was all, of course, under the guise of protecting children.
mm,
Anyone who's ever worked within that system, who has a critical lens, can tell you that the institution of child welfare is not about the welfare of children.
mm,
Um, and so I wasn't long for that place. But what drew me to work in the schools, where my research is based, is working within expulsion programs.
mm,
And so, yeah. And it was traumatic for me, and all of those in those youth that were in the expulsion
mm,
programs. I saw my
mm,
sons, I saw I saw us, and
mm,
um, the manner in which um, they were criminalized by that system was so evident. And I realized that there was very little I could do within the system, and that the fact that their parents didn't know how they were being
yeah,
treated, the general population didn't understand what was going on. It's very clandestine, right, in those systems. And I wanted to use the academy to
right.
elucidate, um, and just sort of highlight what was happening there.
I
And
love,
then lastly,
go,
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I think what drew me to become a professor was a Black student. I didn't want to be a professor. I really I love the connection to folks on the ground. I love the interpersonal piece of working with people. But I found that as part of my studies, having to teach, I was often approached by particularly Black women saying, "You're the first Black professor I've had. We've never spoken about these
Yeah,
issues, or we've never spoken about these issues in this way."
yeah,
And I realized that had to be part of my activism.
yeah.
Right, and even today, I'm part of. I think at U of T we've got the biggest sociology department, in at least North America with over 80 full-time faculty, and I'm the only Black woman still. So, I felt like there was a need for me to be here.
I, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Just, yeah. You said so many things that I was, as I tell my students, pinging off of, but the first being the desire to liberate our people, the desire to be of service through your work. And
Yeah.
it's so evident, having written with you, but also just having how we kiki and talk. It's just very clear that you were destined for this work, to be of service in this way. So I thank you.
Thank you.
Just for standing in your truth, our truth.
My
So
pleasure.
appreciate that. Wow. All right. So question 2. This season of 30 at 8:30, we're having conversations with our special guests regarding the ways in which Black bodies are violently erased. A large focus of your work, as you mentioned, has been on the policing of Black bodies. So to start us off, can you share your thoughts about the ways in which overt, obvious, and covert, subtle policing of Black bodies occurs in our communities? Just a very small question, by the way.
Yeah,
Just really
easy,
like yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I mean, we live this, right? We're policed in so many ways, and so constantly that the surveillance here in the Western world in North America has just become a part of our Black being and consciousness. I don't know that we even know who we are outside of that gaze, right? So I think even it talks about my own.
Where's my little? I mean, because she just did a mic drop production. Mic drops. We don't even know. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. I'm gonna try to do it.
It's okay. I spoke about my parents a little bit earlier, and I was just saying that, a lot of us have had this experience where our parents warned us about our behavior in public or in mixed company before we're even old enough to understand it, right? And I think, and I know that I've seen, you see the Black mother kind of pull up on her child or discipline them a little bit more harshly as a result of the pressure on our parents as sort of being under the watchful eye, right? And the judgmental eye of parents, because we are, of course, we're unhealthy parents. We are, we're always delinquent. We are always already, wrong, deficient in some way, right? And it just goes on from there. So in my work, I use Foucault's concept of the carceral archipelago, or what my sister Ray Reese refers to as carceral redlining, right? And so that's a conceptual space of marginalization and containment that's both police and surveilled. We don't live outside of that. We are inside this sort of matrix, if you will, and we stay there as we navigate in, through, and between institutions. So of course, we're policed through the schools, and just like I've studied, just as other people have studied, but at our jobs where we're always perceived again to be delinquent or lazy or scheming in some way. So we find that we don't often take advantage of medical leaves or move about the space with the entitlement that our white counterparts might have, right? We're always in the position of proving our value and legitimacy in work. We have other racialized folks also hyper surveilling us, policing us. And, in the medical profession, and I think a lot of people take for granted how much we're policed in the medical profession and how racist the medical profession is, because we take for granted that there's this neutrality of science. But a little example that I have from my personal experience. Again, I say I was a single mom, and with my son, I went into the doctor's office for a checkup with my son. He was probably around, I would say 2, 3 at the time, And I asked my doctor, you know, is it normal that he is having these erections? Is it normal that he's like fascinated by a part of his body? And the doctor called CAS. So unbeknownst to me, I had the Children's Aid Society calling me and trying to conduct a full investigation. Um, and so, these are the little ways in which we are always suspect and always policed, right? Because it was assumed that, I wasn't supervising my son,
Right.
perhaps me or someone else was sexually abusing him. And so we're not really, we are not free in professional spaces to not know, ask questions,
Right.
and be innocent.
To have inquiry about our minds, our bodies.
Right.
Wow. Wow.
Or anything else, just in a space of innocence, because we are not innocent. So things like that. Let's see. What and I think that the policing gets even more complicated, of course, as we add identity markers such as sex, gender, sexual orientation, age. Right. We have Black men and women policing each other in terms of how to perform, how to be a man, what is sus, right? What good motherhood looks like, wops, big asses, and good hair, and all of the like, right? The proximity to whiteness and our behavior and the way that we look. And this is all happening under the white gaze and, of course, with much white contribution. So, I think it's happening all around us. And then, outside of the institutions of public spaces, we're always perceived to be out of place because we're meant to be held in captivity in the white imaginary, right?
Right.
So the Black person and the Black body is out of place and dangerous in free spaces. And that is always punishable by physical or social death oftentimes. And so policing is a lifestyle and a death style for us.
I can't even, because you're saying all the things, and to be honest with you, I know we're live, but they're so profoundly resonant with me, and I'm sure so many members of the Crip community, that I am sitting here almost speechless, because I recognize in this moment the internalized policing that we do, the even idea that we're having this conversation and freedom of thought to talk about it. I'm sitting here just almost choked up with gratitude, but with also feeling free in this moment. So, I mean, just damn, thank you.
That's sweet. I mean, that. So I want to thank you for having that, providing that space for us to talk like this.
Oh, wow. Oof. Okay. I know you have more to say. And this should be 90 minutes, y'all. I'm just saying, at least 90. But I want to get onto the next question, because I know you're going to take a deeper dive into some of the nuggets of wisdom that you've just given us through your work. And I want people to know about your work and the way in which you move and tell some truths that need to be told. So in your article specifically, Expulsion Programs, Colonizing Spaces of Exception, you zero in, just as you have in this conversation, on the policing of Black students in education systems that result in the overwhelming expulsion, AKA erasure, of Black students. I want to read this quote from your article, if I may. I hope I can do it justice. Excluded Black students are incarcerated within their skin, making them invisible while their skin is hyper visible. They are incarcerated within the spaces of their urban neighborhoods. They are incarcerated within and confined to their lives, afflicted by occlusion, abjectness, and ineptitude, and limited in their possibilities. And they are incarcerated in their schools, which, as Walkons, I hope I pronounced that correctly, describes, operate in the manner of institutions of confinement whose primary mission is not to educate, but to ensure custody and control, to borrow the motto of many departments of corrections. I mean, I have a question after that, but Crip community, I just want you to settle in with that quote from her article. Read sister's work. Cite the sister's work. So I just want to know, you've started to, but let's just take a deeper dive. Can you share your reflections and your understanding of the root causes and consequences of what's happening here?
Absolutely. I think that we theorize around the root causes all the time. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes, I'm here.
Yes. Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
And, for me, the root cause is an irrational fear that whiteness thrives on, an unjust accrual and hoarding of power, and a culture, or rather a pathology, that was born out of all of that. So I think Blackness has been co-created by whiteness. And when we think about identity and our ability to develop our identities and construct our identities, we don't get to do that as Black people without white mediation, white people first telling us who we are, or we're born into that here. And so the way that we're understood justifies our poor treatment, the need to surveil us for policing, and the need to contain us, the limits on our rights, or the rights to have rights as full citizens. All of those things, it justifies it. And I call it a pathology because to me it kind of works similarly to psychopathology in that we can't teach psychopaths to have empathy, right? And when we do, we end up with something even more dangerous. We end up with folks who know how to pretend they have empathy in order to draw us in. And so, yeah, exactly, to perform it. And I think, that's the reason that anti-bias and anti-racism training doesn't really work, because we are trying to teach a system, and the folks behind it, the folks that uphold it, to see us, to be racially empathic, if you will, to see us as humans, or to see us as equal, right? And so it doesn't work. It's incongruent. And so this pathology is ingrained in and upheld by the institutions, because they're created by people that were afflicted by it, either consciously or unconsciously. And that's what's going on in the schools as well, right? The schools are seeing I mean, if you look at, how schools, what the function of schooling was, right? It is to produce functional and productive members of society, people who will follow rules, people who will contribute to the government, people who will, most importantly, contribute to the workforce. And if Black folks are already sort of deficient, then our contributions aren't valued in that way, and so we are being systematically funneled out of that system, right, and into places of containment where it's thought we belong.
I mean, y'all, she said some words. Can you you said some words. I don't even know where to begin at this point. Like, I am really truly immersed in the conversation, and it's 9 o'clock. So I mean, 30 minutes. Okay, Crip community, just stay with me. One more, maybe 1.5. Can you stay? Okay? Everybody's fire emojis, red hearts. So I'm just going. Just stay. Question 4. I just want to switch gears for a moment because I want to get in this other piece that you wrote that was just like, okay. Focus on the more obvious. I want to switch gears for a moment. Focus on the more obvious things we think about regarding policing of Black bodies, police brutality, over surveillance, as you mentioned, mass incarceration, etc., etc., etc. In the book, Disarm, Defund, Dismantle Police, Abolishing in Canada, you published a chapter entitled "Police and Social Work Collaborations, competing professions of oppression. When we think about the chronic and cumulative traumatic impact of policing Black bodies and social work's mission to address social injustice, your chapter highlights ways in which these two professions remain both complicit and complacent in efforts to prevent the violent erasure of Black bodies. I'm wondering if you could say more about why the focus on these two professions in particular, and what were your key sort of takeaways, and what might be a call to action in a minute or less.
In a minute or less. Okay, so this topic is always really interesting to me because my eldest son is a police officer, and I often bring him in to talk because I am, a huge police abolitionist.
I did not
And
know.
so, yes, yeah, he's a Toronto police officer. Trying to really do good work within the system, I would say. But I don't believe in in policing as a concept and as a force, and it's because it doesn't believe in my citizenship. So we often think about, when we talk about sort of the defunding police, it's about reallocating resources perhaps to social work to partner them, and with an idea that maybe social work can handle a lot of the issues that police are called to, that that deal with mental illness, or maybe the systemic oppressive pieces. But social work is also an instrument of state control, just like police are. And so I think that it is a huge misconception, I think, to believe that a partnership there will wield different results. Social work, they are police in other capacities, right? I always called, while I was there, especially when I was called CAS, the parent police, right? And so they're doing largely the same work differently. And so I think that they're extremely compatible. And so I focus on those two professions because of that sort of ideological compatibility, and the really misguided notion that social work might be the answer to what police are doing to the masses, because they're doing it under state direction as well, right? Social work actually creates class, creates all of the differences and divides that the police are there to protect. So
Given that, I didn't know your son was a police officer. We both have backgrounds in social work. We're both teaching. What is the call to action? I often, particularly when I'm teaching the first year MSW students who learn very quickly, there are a lot of readings we share about some of the damage that social work the profession has historically done and continues to do, with the mindset to understand it, to learn from it, and do better. So how then, because I want to encourage them not to give up hope, but how then do they ensure that they are not perpetuating a lot of what you're talking about? What's the call to action?
Well, unfortunately, working under these systems and institutions, it's hard not to. But one of the biggest calls to action is the consciousness piece, right? The understanding, the close interrogation of what you're doing in the helping profession, really interrogating what help is, and how it is that you are embodying state control in your work, embodying or reinscribing power dynamics as you work with your clients, as you work with the populations, the groups, the communities, the families, the acknowledgement of that power and the active attempts to sort of redistribute, share the power, be led, be taught by those people that you're supposed to be serving, I think is one of the, I think, maybe fundamental calls to action, like one of the fundamental things that we can do.
Interrogating what help is, what it looks like for the people we've been called to serve. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Last question, y'all, because I've got to ask all of our guests this question this season, because at the end, it's a little buildup, a little crescendo. You know I love a good crescendo. So just going to ask this question. And we've been talking a lot about this. Remember, as Black researchers, we are often driven to do this work as a means of responding to the urgent, deeply rooted call to serve our communities who continue to be over-policed in many forms. With that sense of urgent responsibility comes a level of resolute perseverance and, dare I say, complex traumatic assault that is persistent on our minds, our bodies, and our souls. How do you, given that, how do you care for yourself while doing this necessary work?
I'd like to say that I'm doing a piss poor job.
Camisha.
I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. I mean, listen, we have candid conversations and it's not easy. We've talked about this.
It's not easy. And you know what? I think self-care is important, yes. I think that we put a lot of weight on our own resilience and ability to care for ourselves. And I think doesn't really exist in a vacuum. And I feel like our lifeline really is community. And I feel like we need to be caring for each other far more than we're calling on us to care for ourselves, because we can't pour from an empty cup. We can't pour into ourselves from an empty cup. So I think, yeah, really a community is a huge lifeline. And really, for me, it's about finding your people, building community and building circles of care for each other.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Dr. Sibblis. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insight, and your truths with us this evening. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Have hearts. You have love, this honesty, community, hearts. You've got fire 100 in the chat. I don't know if you can see it, but people are loving all that you've said, and I think it's resonating with our crib community tonight. All right.
Thank you.
So, crib community, as always, from our crib to yours, stay safe and keep well. Tune in next Wednesday night. See you soon. Good night.
Bye-bye.